I want to go close with a couple of things to get you ready to, I don't know, get another gear maybe and go out and do more things, or go to sleep and hopefully leave with a smile with the experience of this visual dialogue and conversation that we hopefully have all had. So I'm going to end with a few things. So I was very moved by one of the stories that we got to do this year that was in Detroit. And it actually, I think, a very good segue to what Peter just talked about. A man living outside of Detroit had a problem. He had an issue that he could not easily get from point A to point B. And through a story which went extremely viral, it's one of the 3 top stories of the year in terms of people looking at it and seeing it, people found out about him, and some things got changed for him. He ended up with a car, and more importantly, the way the buses and the transportation around Detroit did get changed. Not all change happens like this, but it's a fairly interesting story. So here's I'm going to show you a couple little snippets, some really fast stories. So first we'll go to Mr. Robertson.
It's been mostly up, up. You know, it's been mostly, and really, deep down inside, I get all this now, but I'm still the same man that I've always been. And you can and I go back to, I cannot stop talking about my parents enough. You can credit back to them who kept me humble and kept me working. But all the years I've been walking, I've been thinking, Lord, if you could get some, you could make a way, give me a good, good translation, go back and forth. I never thought it would be like this, but when I think, and now that I do think about it, I feel like I'm standing as living proof that prayer works every time, and I want everybody to know that. The best part of the story was that now starting to get people to talking about the bus system, how fractured it is. It got people to thinking that, hey, we got a problem, we need to fix it.
Sorry about that. Zuma represents a couple other newspapers around the world. Detroit Free Press, I'm very fortunate to work with. Nancy Andrews, who was here last year, she produced that piece. And it's an amazing story about this man who walked to work forever, started at something like, Roy, do you remember? Is it 3:30 in the morning? He gets to work, then he walked all the way home because there was no bus and he had no money. And he's working hard to take care of his family. And he'd get back home and he'd sleep for 3 hours and walk again. And it just tore, people were very moved by the fact that he spent 40 miles both ways doing his struggle. It's just a great testament to the human condition, how we persevere despite the greatest odds. So the next story is also sort of persevering or trying to get a message across. I love photography. This is not work for me, though I feel very worked right now. I'm very tired, but it's telling the stories that people don't get to tell is so important, and getting it out there. And that's what us photographers do, whether we're shooting nature, whether we're shooting pictures of famous people or people that are not so famous. It's important, and we've seen that throughout with the words and everything everybody has used in their photography, which I think is really amazing and cool ways of applying their craft. So one such story that's kind of interesting to me is in Tampa, there was a postman who was very upset about the way the tax laws are working and the system, and the fights between the Democrats and the Republicans, and all this yada, yada, yada stuff that we hear about all the time. And nothing ever changes. It doesn't seem to, at least. So this guy took the matter in his own hands. He's a postman. He learned how to fly a little Robertson helicopter. And you're going to see a little bit of video about his struggle to try to make a difference and get a message across.
I'm Doug Hughes. I'm 61 years old, and I'm a mailman working out of Riverview, Florida. No sane person would do what I'm doing. I have carefully planned it so that nobody will get hurt, including me, especially me. I'm not suicidal. and I'm not going to commit suicide, and I'm not going to fly into any monuments. Terrorists don't announce their flights before they take off, okay? Terrorists don't broadcast their flight path. Terrorists don't invite an escort to go along with them. I have got a plane, a gyroplane, and I'm going to fly it. I'm going to violate the no-fly zone non-violently. I intend for nobody to get hurt, and I'm going to land on the Capitol Mall in front of the Capitol building. I'm going to have 535 letters strapped to the landing gear in boxes, and those letters are going to be addressed to every member of Congress. I'm delivering the message right to them, not for their sake, but for the impact that it will have, because I'm trying to galvanize millions of people to do a relatively simple thing. Change the government to build a wall of separation between the government and big money so that government will represent the people. There are these problems and these problems and these problems that are much more important than campaign finance reform. But those won't get addressed until we fix campaign finance reform. I don't believe that the authorities are going to shoot down a 60-year-old mailman in a flying bicycle. I'm going to give them plenty of warning, well over an hour in advance of me getting to the no-fly zone, so that they know who I am and what I'm doing, and that it's intended to be nonviolent. I'm defenseless. They could knock me down. A Boy Scout with a BB gun could shoot me down. But I don't believe that anybody wants to personally take responsibility for the fallout that would result from publicly executing somebody for an act of dissent. I have thought about walking away from this whole thing because it's crazy. And I have thought about being 75 years old and watching the collapse of this country and thinking that I had an idea that might have arrested the fall. And I didn't do it. And I will tell you completely honestly, I'd rather die in the flight than live to be 80 years old and see this country fall. I'm going to violate the no-fly zone non-violently. I intend for nobody to get hurt. And I'm going to land on the Capitol Mall in front of the Capitol building. I'm going to have 535 letters strapped to the landing gear in boxes, and those letters are going to be addressed to every member of Congress. I don't believe that the authorities are going to shoot down a 60-year-old mailman in a flying bicycle. I'm going to give them plenty of warning, well over an hour in advance of me getting to the no-fly zone, so that they know who I am and what I'm doing, and that it's intended to be nonviolent. I have thought about walking away from this whole thing because it's crazy, and I have thought about being 75 years old and watching the collapse of this country and thinking that I had an idea that might have arrested the fall.
So, anyway, we often cover stories after they happen, don't even know why they happened. James got to find out that this guy was about to do this. There's a huge ethical dilemma at the Tampa Bay Times to figure out whether or not to cover this or not, whether they were part of the problem, whether it was illegal, a lot of ethical concerns. They went back and forth. They ended up deciding to do it, and I only think they got us involved to legitimize it, maybe. So I just applaud, though, that they went the extra mile, and this man went the extra mile.